Hey guys, welcome back to the Project Bodybuilding Podcast. I'm here with a special guest. With my knowledge, the first time you've put your face out there, maybe not, Goat Fitness, Krishan.
Yes, man, definitely the first time I put my face on, man. But nice to be here. How you guys doing?
Uh, that's great. I did look. I was like, Goat Fitness face reveal on YouTube, and I was like, I wonder if this will be like his first podcast or any video where he uses his face. And sure enough, it was. So I feel privileged.
Me and EP09 have talked about doing a podcast a little bit, but kind of just hard to set our schedules up. But yeah, I actually plan to kind of start putting myself out more once I got to 10K. So hopefully this very, very soon.
I think so. And you're like very close to 10K. Like, you're like what, a couple hundred away?
Yeah, I think I got about 9.1 right now. So about 900 subs away.
Yeah, yeah. You'll be there very soon, I'd bet. So this weekend we are here to discuss one of the major events in bodybuilding that's not really a show. It is the Pittsburgh Pro guest posting. And this one, would you say it's fair to say that we've had one of the better ones in a while? I thought it was actually quite good, more than usual. I don't know if that is the common sentiment.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think it was interesting to see Eris Kalasinski and Ramon Dino out there. Now, something I was actually thinking, because I was wondering why did they add Eris? Why did they add Martin? I wonder if they kind of knew maybe Big Ramy wouldn't be able to make it. So, let's go ahead and bring in these extra guys just in case. Now, that's something I've been keeping in the back of my mind.
Yeah, because the last time they had a classic guy on, if I'm not mistaken, was 2017 or I think actually 2018, and that was Breon. They just had one. And I thought that was cool. I don't see why classic isn't up here. I think it makes more sense than men's physique, and they've had 212 guys on, so I don't really mind at all. And I thought they were worthy additions. But yeah, actually, before we even get into Pittsburgh, the actual guest postings, the people that showed up, let's actually talk about Big Ramy. So Big Ramy, last minute yet again, skipped the Pittsburgh Pro guest posting,
Yeah.
citing visa issues. Do you buy that story?
I mean, man, if you watched my video, I said, listen, we just have to trust Big Ramy. He said his visa issues, and if that's the case, I mean, there's nothing that Big Ramy can really do about this. So, you're
Hmm.
gonna have your people that say, yeah, he didn't want to stand next to Derek, he didn't want to stand next to Nick Walker, but I actually heard a rumor that Ramy's 360 pounds right now. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how true that is, but
Y- y- Well, I'll just read the whole thing. This is Big Ramy from what I know directly from Big Ramy. It's at least on his Instagram. Dear fans and fellow athletes, I'm truly sorry to announce that due to visa delays, I won't make it to this year's Pittsburgh Pro Guest event. And this was 2 days ago. So, and the show was yesterday. So it was really just the day before the event. Well, 2 days before the event. And I won't. This means I'm not only missing a chance to guest pose, but also the invaluable opportunity to be a part of Mr. Jim Mannion event again and connect with you, my incredible supporters. Your enthusiasm has always been my driving force, and it's deeply disappointing to not share this moment with you. Then he goes on to say that he's just more fired up than ever. Um, it's interesting. Tyler Manu is actually in the comments as the top comment. We will miss you, my man. I wish the visa process was easier. So at least in public, Tyler is buying that. But I
yeah.
think given that he skipped one before and didn't even tell anybody, it's bad optics. It was always going to be seen this way. It was always, going to be seen like, oh, he's skipping again.
Right.
And for me, actually, I was so disappointed, and I think I could be reading too much into it. It's either yes, it is visa issues, or it's maybe something bigger. And I am leaning towards that. Big Ramy, will he still show up to the Mr. Olympia?
I think so, but I do want to ask, what are you leaning towards? If you don't think it was visa issues, why do you think we didn't get to see Big Ramy at this guest posing?
I think he wants out entirely. I wouldn't be too um I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a retirement announcement soon, to be honest. And that's not even to be negative or malicious. I just think that's the current situation he's in. Time catches up with everybody. And I think now that he's like taken some time away from bodybuilding and done different things, he can kind of it's hard, to quit something you've done for so long. But now that he's seen he can do different things with his time, and he doesn't just have to be a bodybuilder, I think it's going to be very appealing to him. So I think it there's a very good chance that he just may be done entirely.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that statement, man. And it's quite possible that it's true. And obviously, this was a nice apology, a nice reason for not being able to make it. But I'm pretty sure that somebody in Ramy's camp actually put this together. So,
Hmm. I would bet actually. But yeah, it's you know, I don't know how the process works. I don't even have a passport. Most Americans don't. And I'm also not in Egypt, which is also bordering the whole Gaza conflict right now. So um the visa issues thing certainly makes sense. Like it is certainly on the face of it, very, very plausible. Um, but to me, given the timing of everything, I don't know. I really don't know. And it's interesting because I wish you would have put out an update. Maybe we'll get one soon. Because
yeah,
that's what I would have done in that situation.
yeah.
Why not put out a full update for the fans?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, listen, if you planned on getting to the guest posing and last minute visa issues stopped you, well, post the update. Let us see how you're looking. Because honestly, Ramy has only been posting updates from 5, 6 years ago. Like we
Yeah.
haven't really seen anything recent. I seen the one blurry screenshot on the phone,
Yep,
but
yep.
nothing really recent. If he was actually planning on coming to the guest posing, let's see what he looks like.
Exactly. I mean, he doesn't owe us anything, but it certainly would probably help the bad press to, it doesn't even have to be a video, honestly. If he says these are recent screenshots from a posing video, that would be enough because everyone was interested in how he was looking. Because I thought the 2023 Arnold was pretty good, but 2022 which is where he left basically. He left a very bad impression. So. And with his Arnold placing, it just continued. So he should definitely do something. There's no reason you can't
Right.
find a good room and do a little video. Yeah, it's just
I
but
think we should take him at what he says, though. I mean, I think at the top we should put that Ramy was unable to make it to visa issues, but I think it's still okay to speculate. But personally, I'm like, let's just take the guy's word for it. I mean, we don't really know.
yeah. Yeah, that is fair. So you think he's still gonna make it to the Olympia?
I'm
I
hopeful.
yeah, yeah. I give it 30, 70, 70 being he doesn't. What are your thoughts? If you had to do you think it's likelier than not that he does it, or do you think it's a 50-50 thing? What do you think the odds are on that?
You know what, man? To be completely honest, I'm thinking like
Yeah,
if I had to bet, I don't think he's gonna make it. But
yeah,
I'm hoping he's gonna be there, from like a fan perspective. And honestly, it would give us something great to talk about, compare him to Nick, Samson, all of these guys. But if I had to bet, I honestly don't think Big Ramy would make it to the.
Y- all right. Yeah, I mean, I just think at this point, yeah. I don't know. I'd have to really see. Maybe he's looking at his physique right now, and maybe it's not exactly where he wants to be post treatment and things like that. Because we know he's very big, but that doesn't necessarily, even if
Yeah.
he is 360 pounds, that doesn't necessarily solve the problems. In fact, it may even make them worse. So I don't know. I really hope we get an update from him, but who
The
knows?
thing about it is like he's not. I feel like Ramy isn't showing us that he's still here. He isn't showing us he still wants to compete. We aren't seeing him in the gym from week to week. We aren't seeing full physique updates. He's posting these old videos from 2014, 2015. Now, something else I do want to mention. Brandon Curry typically does this. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't think Brandon was going to do last year's Olympia. He downsizes a lot. He doesn't post anything. And we're like, is Brandon even going to be there? And he typically shows up. And I mean, honestly, we got this same question for this year. Is Brandon going to be there? But I mean, you never really know. Sometimes these guys are very quiet and still end up doing the show.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. But yeah, I think Brandon makes a little more sense because like you said, he does downsize. Um, so he's going to be more impressive on stage, even from a size perspective, because he really bulks up during a trip to Kuwait. But I did notice, like, on his story recently, like, yeah, this was just 14 hours ago, he's at his son's athletic events all the time, and that was the case yesterday. So I think that makes a little more sense that he skipped it. But yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. I thought it was a little odd that Brandon set this one out, but it makes a little more sense to me overall.
You know?
And then let's get into the actual guest posing. So shout out to Gilco Productions, killing it as always. But I want to first start with the two classic guys. Like you said, we had Ramon Dino and Urs Kalasinski. Maybe they're to fill in the gap for Big Ramy, but these are not the first classic guys to do this. So as classic guys, from a guest posing freak factor perspective, were you still impressed, or were you like, they're classic guys? I still was looking at Urs. What do you think?
You know, I was actually very impressed by Eris Kalasinski,
Yeah.
but his conditioning, he really brought good conditioning to this guest posing. And honestly, I think this is the way that a classic physique guy should guest pose. Now, nothing against Ramon. He's edged out Urs numerous times, but I definitely think the physique that Urs brought to this guest posing was a little bit more appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, he still had striations in the glutes, and he was bigger overall. So I usually don't follow the hype of this classic guy should go to the open. I hate that. Like just because some guy's big in the offseason doesn't mean they should automatically go to open. But in Urz's case, getting big and keeping the condition, it leads me to believe that it may not even be a choice at some point. What do you think? Do you think we ever see Urz in open?
The thing about Urs, he struggles with the arm size and the back size. And,
Yeah.
he's still a very young guy, but so far, we haven't really seen much growth in the area. So him going to men's open bodybuilding, and of course, if he's going to open, he's looking to win a Mr. Olympia title.
Yeah.
How's they going to look next to a Crizzo, a Nick? So maybe in the long run, I could see him going there, but I think he has his best chance of winning an Olympia title in classic. Later down the road, he could possibly be a top 10 open guy. But as
Hmm.
far as winning the O, I think his best shot is gonna be in classic.
Yeah, I didn't even know Ramon was going to be here actually until I saw him backstage on someone's story, and I was like, oh, I thought he was just a special appearance, but no, he was actually guest posing. But yeah, like you said, maybe less than appropriate shape, but I think Ramon, he's one of those guys that, like Brandon Curry or like even like Chris Bumstead used to be, just like completely stops everything, including gym and like diet, um, to regroup after the Olympia for a little bit. So I think it's still pretty impressive if that was
Yeah.
the case. What do you think about Chris Bumstead always showing up to these, making some kind of brief speech, and then never taking the shirt off?
I was making this comment in my comment section. I was like, they already treat Chris like he's a retired legend. Like all of his peers are out here guest posing, posing down. And he's coming out to speak like he's a Phil Heath or Jay
Yeah.
Cutler real quick. And I mean, it is the type of status that he has, but we all know that Chris Bumstead isn't gonna pose down. Chris is just kind
Yeah.
of he's in another league. So
Yeah, and that's a shame. I think now that he works with Haney and now that he does like still do a lot of things and maintain after the Olympia, I think he would look good guest posting. Like anytime he puts out an off-season update, I only
um,
ever see positive comments. only ever see positive comments.
Do you think it's possibly because Chris is under a way bigger magnifying glass? Like, guys get critiqued at these guest poses, but they don't have Chris Bumstead's following. So if he doesn't look appropriate, that could be pretty bad for Chris.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pressure coming from somewhere, probably multiple different avenues, but he's probably like, there's no point in doing that. If I don't want that stress, I don't have to have it. I don't need this for my stock. I'm already top of the food chain. So yeah, it's something like that. Um, he probably
Yeah.
just doesn't want the hassle, to be honest. But yeah, I think he'd look good, to be honest. I really do.
Truthfully, and it's possible that this is the best that Chris has looked at this point going into the Mr. Olympia. It seems like this year he is taking the prep a little bit more serious, and maybe that's because he feels like the guys are starting to close the gap a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah, I know a lot of people think that. I don't even think Wesley's going to be close. Like I'm not exactly a Chris fanboy. Um, but I think he is such a dominant champion that I don't think Ramon was close in 2022, 2023. I don't think Wesley will be close. I think he'll be even less close than Ramon was, to be honest, if I'm being quite frank. That may be a little bit of a hot take. Um, but yeah, I think the only thing that's going to take Chris out is like multitude of injuries, which he seems to be fairly prone to, like small ones here and there, or like if he just
Yeah,
retires.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, it's tough to even say if Wesley will beat Ramon again at this year's Olympia. Chris is just in another league, and that's just because, like, structurally.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have guys like Robert Timms and Wesley Vissers, but I personally don't think they truly have the quads or even the adductors, the hamstring development to take on Chris Bumstead. They have the upper body, but
Yeah.
and see that's the thing about Ramon, Terrence, Urs, Breon. You can't beat Chris because they don't have the structure. They don't have the width of a Chris Bumstead.
Hmm. Yep. Absolutely. One in a million athlete for sure. Um, so overall, I think these guys were worthy additions. I think these guys worked the crowd and were as impressive to look at in their own right, especially yours compared to the other guys. But
Yeah.
we'll get to the open guys actually. First guy I want to start with is who I think was maybe, and this may be a little controversial, the least impressive. And maybe that's because we always see him. I don't know. What did you think of Samson?
Pretty much what I said in my video about Samson and Hunter. I didn't really talk about them much. I'm like, we pretty much see them all the time.
Yeah.
Samson, I believe, is in about week 6 or maybe week 8 of a detox where he is supposed to be off everything. Now, most of the people in my comments don't believe that any bodybuilder ever goes fully off, but apparently Samson is off, and I mean, personally, I believe it. So we all know that. So I wouldn't really look too much into this look. But it's crazy that if Samson is off or very close to that, this guy still looks insane.
Hmm. Yeah. Definition of master class. I personally think he is overall more impressive, even though he's smaller on a stage. I think it's kind of like almost like a Phil Heath effect, where Phil Heath, I don't think he looked crazy at guest posings, but his freak factor came from when he was in condition and still had that roundness. I think Samson is kind of close to that. I think he is more impressive in better condition, where some guys, maybe like I think we'll get to him, but Derek Lunsford, I think he is more impressive from an overall standpoint. Just like, man, that guy's looking crazy from an offseason standpoint. Um, but Samson, yeah, like you said, we see him all the time. Does guest postings a lot. He just did one in Detroit, kind of sort of impromptu, and then we obviously just saw him at the Arnold. We see guest postings all the time. Very transparent with the updates as well. So yeah, I think more of the same. Think
I
that's
like
fair.
the back double, and honestly, it's probably just an execution thing. I've always said Samson is slowly but surely improving his back, but
Hmm.
that back double looked pretty good.
I think so too. And I think now that everything else is bigger, I think the waist is actually
Yeah,
more proportionate, actually, oddly enough.
that's actually what we saw at the Arnold Classic UK. I believe Samson came in a little bit lighter and his waist looked a lot better. Um, we're used to a lot of people saying that Samson has a small waist, and I feel like the more size that he adds, we're kind of getting away from that statement. But if he
Hmm.
brings more of a look like he brought to the UK, I would consider his waist to be small.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Off topic maybe, but what do you think about him going to Kuwait for not exactly a full-blown Olympia prep at this point, but he's going there to for like a camp, basically. Do you think that's the right move?
I do think it is the right move for Samson. Oxygen is like a bodybuilder's dream. They have the meals for you, they have the training, they even re-rec all the weights for you. I think it's great. And I mentioned that a lot of people may want Samson to hire a different coach and not work with his wife. But I said, listen, Samson was under so much stress after the Arnold Classic. He lost Milos. He said his body
Mm,
was failing. And somehow she arguably brought him in at his all time best to this show. I
hmm.
think she really does need a little bit more credit.
Yeah,
But overall, I think it's a good idea. But I'll say this, I don't think this is going to help Samson get more conditioned.
really. I'm actually, I think if he can get into that next level of condition, he's going to get it. Maybe in Kuwait, they're not really known for conditioning, but they're known for that tunnel vision aspect, which maybe is his problem. But you don't think it's going to help?
Honestly, man, I've already hinted at it, but it could be a genetic thing. He was basically saying he left. Well, not he was saying, but a lot of people were assuming he left Milos because Milos couldn't get the job done. Milos could not bring Samson in condition.
Hmm.
And I mean, we've seen a lot of guys over the course of bodybuilding that have beautiful shape and they just could never bring the conditioning. I
Hmm.
mean, it's possible that Samson might be one of those guys. I mean, a lot of people don't want to hear it, and I definitely want to give him a little bit more time, but we kind of just have those guys in bodybuilding with great shape that can never really get the glutes and the hamstrings dug out.
I agree. And it does always seem to be the darker skinned guys. So I think the genetic thing is actually a component because they always say whiter guys known for that Caucasian dry getting conditioned, but don't really have the fullness. And then some darker guys do always suffer. Like I think like I'm really getting Lionel Bayeki flashbacks
You
actually.
know, I agree with what you're saying, but the first person that actually came to mind was Lee Priest. Lee could never really get the glutes and the hamstrings dug out. But yeah.
Yeah, Lee is black confirmed. Okay. So um let's go to Andrew actually. He is
Okay.
the talk of the town. I think I put out a poll and I think 50% of the participants, and I think there's probably over 1,000 by this point, had Andrew winning the guest posing. Yeah, 55%. Way more
I,
than anybody else on this poll.
I don't want to lose me or you any subs, but we're gonna sit here right now and we're gonna look through it. Because no offense to Andrew, but I'm struggling to understand how this was the most impressive physique at the guest posing. So maybe we can break it down and figure it out.
Well, to me, Hunter was, and we'll get to him, but I'm kind of with you. Like, I think it's definitely interesting to see. Like, he's still, you don't see a guy that's 6'2", 330 pounds like this. And yeah, it's a sight to see, but in terms of like a bodybuilding perspective, when you're steeped in the sport, I don't I don't necessarily see it. He did put on an actual posing routine, as you just saw a little something. But yeah, here in the front double, like improved, but I mean, I, I'm kind of with you. I don't really see like you can't really point to one thing. It's just like, oh, he's massive. Like he still looks like Andrew Jacked. I don't think he like ate his former self.
What do you think about the quads?
I almost said in my video that I'm working on, and I'm going back and forth on this. I think they look fuller, not exactly bigger. I don't know if there's more tissue there. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
Yeah. What do you think about the arms?
Now,
I don't know if you caught that.
I don't know how long you've been watching Go Fitness, but we do not accuse anyone of any type of oil, any type of synthol. We don't do any
Mhm.
accusations of funny business at Go. So I'm gonna say that Andrew's arms just look crazy. Like the tricep sweep, triceps just blew up. And I mean,
Yeah, they did.
honestly, that was the biggest highlight of his physique for me.
I thought the arms were very impressive. I mean, like I think I said in my video, I get that he's supposed to be Flex Wheeler 2.0, but I
Yep.
wish he didn't take his arm routine. If you if you know what I'm
Honestly,
saying.
man, looking at Andrew's arms right now, you can possibly make a case for the best in the off season at least. You
I've
can put
always
him up
liked
there with
Andrew's
Chris
arms.
and Nick Walker.
They're a different shape. I think the skinnier forearms always hurt him. That's something people always bring up in my comment section. But I think the actual shape to the bi and the tri are actually very good. And I think because he's such a bigger guy, I they're big. Like just because it may not be like proportionally a bigger arm, like
Right.
just on stage, these are taping at some of the biggest for sure.
There's always the guys that say Andrew isn't going to win the O because he has small forearms.
That's true. That is true. I wish he showed more of the back. I'm interested to see that. I don't think the hamstrings are brought up at all, actually.
Can
Um,
we get a pause on the side chest?
I'll do you one better. I think I have a photo from the maybe guest posing, maybe not. No, doesn't look like there is. Here they all are together in the RX muscle video because he didn't stay in it in his actual routine for too long. Oh, and they and they moved the camera. Oh yeah, they moved the camera. Darn. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
When it goes back
Let's
around, I'll pause it.
let's just try to get it in his routine and just kind of analyze it from top to bottom. But honestly, I guess everyone just has to be saying Andrew is the most impressive because he's the biggest guy up there with this Mona Lisa type physique. But I mean, honestly, do do those people think that Andrew would be beating Derek or Nick at this year's Olympia?
I mean, I'd like to see it, quite frankly. And I'm a Nick Walker lover. I think Andrew, he's grown on me, but he is missing some things, hamstrings, conditioning, that holds him back in the back. Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see it.
How much do you think Andrew has really improved from that initial Texas Pro?
In 2022,
Yeah.
not that much. Actually, it depends on the show. Like he goes back and forth. Like if you compare
Okay.
it to like the 2023 Arnold, I'd say there's some a fair amount of improvement, but he drops the ball at every Olympia he goes to. So it's like it's I don't really overall not that much. If you averaged them all out, overall not that much. But he hasn't had an off season. This is the first time he's taken an off season.
True.
Okay. I'm gonna pause it there. One of his weaker shots, I would say, he's very full and round, and his pecs like jut out a lot. Um, but he still manages to look a little lanky somehow in a way. I don't really know how it's possible. I think it's maybe the longer arms. What do you see here?
Do you have any suspicions of the rear delt or just
No,
it's just really popping in this?
I think it's always been like that, perhaps. Let's see. Texas Pro 2023. Get to the bottom of this. I see what you're saying though. I
Uh,
mean, and the arms were a red flag for me as well. So I gotta be suspicious of the delts too. Um,
Now I'm not accusing him of anything, but I just noticed that they do seem to pop a lot.
well, they were always like that, so we'd have to make the case for it back in the day too, because I mean, this is like the divot between the tricep insertion and the rear delt hump. That is quite that is quite concave. That is
Yeah.
that's quite a jump. Um, but comparing this, now that I have this photo up, comparing this to this, um, I gotta be honest, now that I'm seeing like Andrew jacked on an actual stage, I think he's also one of those guys that look freakier and more impressive w with less size, more condition.
Right. But looking at this side chest, I mean, taking nothing away from Andrew, I'm just not seeing how this was the most impressive guy at the guest posing. I mean, and that's honestly what my comment section was filled up with as well. You know, Nick Walker looks horrible. Andrew Jack stole the show, and I'm just not quite seeing that, man.
I think from a purely casual perspective, I get the hype. And he had a little bit going into it because like they all were wearing like those matching, I don't know, jackets, and they were all like, "Oh, Andrew's so massive," and I was like, "Kind of looks like normal to me." Normal Andrew maybe a bit bigger because this is his first off season, but yeah, I don't. He didn't win the guest posting for me. I can tell you that.
I'm not one of the ones that try to gauge how a guy looks when he's fully clothed. I,
Yeah, I don't wrap my head
I
around
let the
that
other
either.
guys do that. But yeah, I did see a few videos about Andrew is out angling everyone. But again, no offense to Andrew, the Mona Lisa of the sport. Um, and also something that's always said, guys that are more aesthetic, they just typically don't look as good at guest posings. And
Yeah,
I guess I'm almost a standalone here on this statement because to everyone else, Andrew stole the show. But
I mean, if you want an extreme example, Sean Roden. You know, Sean Roden, when you're known for your aesthetics and you show up like how Sean Roden used to, it obviously is just completely different from what fans know you for and what they expect. So I'm with you actually. I think, like I said, Samson looks better overall, looks more impressive even on stage. Andrew, even though he's 40 pounds above his stage weight, maybe or whatever it is, he's more impressive when he's cutting down.
excuse me. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen Blessing guest pose, but doesn't necessarily look the best in guest poses either.
I mean, I saw him in Chicago.
It's Chicago Pro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not the biggest fan of Blessing, to be honest, but um, no, I haven't seen him like truly guest pose, but I can imagine. Um, because he's another one of those shapely guys. I, I don't know how you can even look more impressive than for him than what he did at the Indy Pro. Like, I don't think more size on him helps. Just like Andrew, just like Samson, I found Andrew to be impressive, but not like when you see it on stage, stripped down and everything on a real stage. To me, that's more awe-inspiring.
And I mean, I don't want to harp just too much on Andrew. Listen, guys, he's a great bodybuilder. What is he currently fifth in the world?
Yes.
Right. Andrew is still struggling with his posing. And I mean, I could say the same thing for Ramon Dino. We've been
Hmm.
critiquing these guys for posing for a while. Now, don't get me wrong. I love how Andrew tries to pose. He goes out here, he does all of these artistic moves, but
Yeah.
they're still not necessarily being executed properly. And
Yeah.
with the physique like he has, I feel like he really, really has to nail down that posing. Like even the side chest that we looked at, it could definitely be tweaked a little bit.
It's awkward for sure. He can't hit a most muscular. He doesn't know what to do with his arms quite yet. He can hit some shots, but yeah, like transitions and everything. I was watching this, and you always think that Andrew's a good poser, because he always gets so much praise for it. But it's just basically like he caps off his routines with the splits, and then everyone is wowed, and then, and then they're like, "Oh, best posing routine of all time," you know. But no, when I was watching this, I couldn't help but cringe a little, actually, and that's just like you said, he tried, but
Yeah.
I could see places where maybe like that. I don't just
Yeah.
awkward hand placement, awkward things like that. It's just, you know.
My favorite bodybuilder of all time is Sean Ray.
Hmm.
I've watched his 1999 routine at least 1,000 times. And something else that's big about posing is just guys. have to make sure that their body is positioned properly to the audience and to the camera.
Hmm.
So just kind of being a little bit more aware of where the body is. But we should probably start hyping up Andrew soon though, before they think we Andrew haters.
That's true. Not doing Dubai, apparently. AJ said he's not. Um, but he's doing
Texas.
Texas,
That's what my comment section was saying.
and I think no, not something else. Yeah, I think I've just heard Texas for now, which he'll probably win. Um, it's going to be a big show because Texas is like quickly becoming like the new New York Pro. Like this show's off the chain, but Andrew, like you said, fifth in the world. He's probably he doesn't need to bank on another show. He's not like some of these other guys. Um, okay, Hunter Labrada, my winner of the guest posing. The only thing that people can talk about in the comments is the hat on stage. Are you a fan of the hat?
I don't really mind it.
I don't either.
Let me take a second to look at this because I actually have not seen Gilco's HD video of Hunter yet.
I mean, overall, it's it's basically what we saw in Detroit, and there I was floored, to be honest. I thought he was crazy. The level of size, and I think the waist isn't really the problem people make it out to be. Um,
And this
so
is a guy that can execute some poses.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, legs are crazy, arms matching his head. Um, the back is a little too smooth. Um, but I think he was the most impressive for me, maybe besides Derek.
So I can keep it pretty simple when it comes to Hunter. Hunter looks great. He looks huge. My biggest highlight again is just the amount of density that we are seeing in the upper back. He doesn't have the lower legs of a Nick or
Hmm.
Derek, but he's slowly adding more thickness to the top of his back. Now, what I noticed just at this guest posing from looking at Nick and Hunter, we have a lot of guys in the sport with very beautiful shape. And it seems almost inevitable that over time, these guys are going to start pushing the other guys out that aren't as aesthetic. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be this year or even next year, but Hunter looks great. But I would even maybe find myself preferring maybe a Martin just because of like a better flow. I'm not saying that Martin would beat him in a show, but
Hmm.
I'm kind of just starting to get used to guys with the mass and the class. But again, it's off season, so Hunter will look a lot better once he actually dies down for the stage. But just kind of getting used to seeing these guys that are round, bubbly, 3D, shoulder to waist ratio, and just kind of missing with Hunter and Nick.
Yeah. But I get what you're saying completely. But to me, with like these standout body parts like the arms, the sheer level of size, the legs, I think for a guest posing, this is what I look for. I look to be wowed. I'm not looking for the most complete physique. I'm not looking for even the prettiest. Um, and I think if you just wanted mass, because Nick Walker is obviously not playing the mass game too much right now, although he's very impressive and very massive for where he is at this point. I I look I think Hunter was more impressive than Andrew than anybody else for me. I don't know. What do you think?
Honestly, man, you made a nice space on this podcast. I would probably not go on a video and say Hunter looked better than Andrew, but without a doubt, man. Just being completely honest. I mean, Hunter was more impressive.
Yeah.
And like I'm saying that these guys have better genetics, they're more round, they're more 3D or whatever, but there's not necessarily saying that they're gonna beat Hunter.
Hmm.
For himself, Hunter has made great improvements. Last year we see the best Hunter of all time at Tampa. He's looking even better this year. I have no reason to think we're not going to see another all-time best Hunter Labrada.
I would agree with that. I don't know if you saw his updates, but apparently he's checked into the 300 pounds club for the first time in his life, and he's not even
Yeah.
exactly pushing. At least according to him, he's growing and eating well, but he's not exactly pushing. This is just kind of all falling into place. I'm not going to say he's not forcing it to some degree because he is still bodybuilding, and living a bodybuilding lifestyle is forcing growth. Like the bodybuilding lifestyle is obviously built for growth. Um, but he is not exactly pushing as hard as he could, but he's getting pretty far.
So I guess kind of my statement, where I was going earlier about, some guys may have better shape. Do you think it's possible that guys like maybe Tonio or Martin could edge out Hunter in the near future? Despite being smaller but having a little bit better shape. How do you think that thing kind of matches up?
Martin, yes. In fact, depending on what Martin does in like the next, even until the Olympia, because Martin can get a little bit bigger again. I don't see Tonio doing it. I see Martin doing that. I'm on the Martin hype train for real. And I think this guest posting just further proved that. Like people are now saying it's going to be somewhat close between him and Nick, relatively speaking. I'm on I'm on the Martin hype train. I think he's like Hunter, a good well-rounder, um, but slightly more aesthetic. He has more flow. He Hunter's going to outsize him currently, but very quickly, I think Martin is going to replace Hunter's spot and maybe even improve on what Hunter is unable to do up until this point, which is kind of break into, that top five besides 2021, which is iffy, but you know what I'm saying.
I mean, I honestly agree with you. And I mean, basically, that's what I was saying. I mean, Hunter does look great at this guest posing. I think he's set to also bring his all time best this year. But with so many guys up and coming with great shape, great structure, great flow, they don't have to be 260, 270 to be Hunter. I think some of these guys can edge him out at 240, 245.
hmm I think that's fair. I think that's entirely fair. So now that we're talking about him, let's go to Martin. I think Martin, he was I think pretty standard. Like we knew he was going to be a week out. So he's not the most impressive from a size perspective, but like I have nothing bad to say about this. Like I think this is a pretty solid shape here for Martin.
Only critique is during the rear lat spread, looked like he had a little bit of trouble opening it up. And also looked to be a little flat here, but it's a guest posing.
Mhm.
I don't have anything negative to say about this physique. Honestly, I'm excited to see how he's going to stack up next to Nick Antonio in New York.
He'll beat Tonio. I, I'm calling it now. I'm saying I've been saying ever since Martin announced the New York Pro, like around the time of the Arnolds that he was doing that in addition to Detroit. I said for a while that he's going to be placing very high. And then after I saw Tonio, then after I saw Martin, I think Martin. It's either going to be Quint or Martin to push Nick, but I look for Martin to push him more.
Quint,
Quint Beastwood. Yeah.
Quint, okay,
And that's only because of the contrast. Um, he's not going to have the
okay.
thickness of Nick Walker. He's not going to have the size, but Martin has all those things. He's very similar to Nick, but better from a shape standpoint. So you can have a similar enough physique, but still doing better than Nick in the shape department, if that makes
Is it
sense.
possible for Martin to win the New York Pro?
There, after seeing this guest posting, there is a 1% chance. 1 to 2% chance. I'm fine with saying that. Because depending on, and we'll get to Nick, but depending on the carb up issue, and I don't know what he did before the guest posing here, but he should run far away from that um for New York. And since we have nothing to say really about Martin, and we can talk about them in conjunction, let's go ahead and move on to Nick Walker. Um, he was also the talk of Pittsburgh, but not for good things. Um, it's the waist. And I'm a Nick Walker fan. I think he could have won the Olympia last year, but what I saw with the waist this time around is putting some doubts into my head, I gotta say.
Only thing that I've noticed so far is when he first came out and when he was trying to get into the front relaxed, it wasn't really controlled. I'm watching really closely now to see. But honestly, man, as I said in my video, we got so many high level guys. I wasn't really just focused on just Nick or just Derek. My eyes were always kind of circulating. But for me, watching that guest posing, it never really jumped out to me. I seen it initially when he came out, but just watching without reading comments, I wasn't like, oh, Nick's midsection is blown out. So But looking back, I can see it a little bit, but I honestly didn't have that impression. I had the impression that his traps look a lot better here.
I think he overall, it's not maybe not as bloated. When he lets it go, it definitely is like that. That is, if he does that in New York, I think Steve Weinberger, some of these other judges will punish him, um, because Nick has always said he's being watched all the time, and you can't do that. Like that was. I'll play it again from the beginning, but that was pretty bad. Even if it wasn't a real pose, like that is, I simply cannot defend whatever that is. That is that's
Now,
pretty bad.
can we be fair that this is just done to Nick Walker? Because I'll be honest with you, there are videos of Samson Dauda where I can do this, where I
Yep.
can make videos and say that Samson's blown his waist out. Hunter
Mhm.
as well. I choose not to do that. But when it comes to Nick, everyone wants to make a bubble gut video. But even Nathan Diasher, I've seen Nathan have his
Yes.
gut out plenty of times, but they have Nick just under this microscope. But I
Yeah,
mean,
I would agree.
I'll say this. I mean, regardless of the issues that people saw at the guest posing, you're looking at an Arnold Classic champion, a top three Olympian, and probably a soon to be two-time New York Pro champion. So
Hmm.
I think Nick will have it under control on stage. Nick has never had issues controlling his midsection. And honestly, it's probably good that he's getting his feedback because
Yeah.
it definitely won't be an issue on stage for Nick Walker. So I just think people just want to pick on Nick.
That is, I mean, that's probably true for a lot of people. But to me, I want to see Nick the best he can possibly be. I thought it wasn't just like a bloating issue, like the stomach protruding from the ab wall. I thought his waist actually looked thicker, like from the obliques or whatever it is. Maybe the abs grew and are pushing things out. That's not really how that works, but maybe. Um, I think just a little thicker. And maybe it is just, he's still on that
Or
routine and eating.
is it the quad smaller? Is it more of the illusion?
That Yeah, I mean, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It could be less quad sweeps making his waist look bigger because maybe he's not training his legs. He's holding back since the hamstring injury, very possible. I actually think maybe the quads were improved. I'm still going back and forth on that. I'm looking at photos.
It's always hard to say.
Yeah, but I think the waist with in conjunction with the legs, the legs are never going to look that impressive, unfortunately, just because of the illusion.
The first 5 seconds of Nick Walker coming out, I mean, I don't think anyone can defend that. I mean, honestly, he just has to do better. Even
Mhm.
if that's him putting his arms across his stomach until he can kind of get it together. I see Akeem do it, even Keon do it. That's just unacceptable. And just being Nick Walker, it's gonna get talked about. I wouldn't be surprised if later today we see a video of someone that screenshotted this and saying
I
like
think that's
Bubble
fair.
Gut is back.
Yeah. Um, yeah, like you said, I can't. I'm the biggest Nick Walker fan. I think his abs and thigh shot is good. I think he's improved the side chest. I think that's a knockout shot for just about anyone at this point. The rear lat spread, one of his weaker poses. I noticed big improvement here. Um, but yeah, that first 5 seconds, that is certainly tough.
I also think some of these people just have not seen Nick Walker in a while. I mean,
That's
that's
true.
just, I mean, this is Nick. People like Nick's physique is so ugly. Nick needs to grow the quads. This is the same guy that won the Arnold. This is the same guy that was top three at the O. I just think people haven't seen him in a while. So, and despite all these critiques, we're going to see how Nick performs this year.
Yeah, yeah. Despite everything I saw here, even like with the negatives, I still think New York is a done deal. I mean, if it is like if the waste is just like out of control, that's one thing. But even here, if he brought the same kind of control, I think he'd be docked for it, but not enough like against Tonio, against Quint, against maybe even Martin. I just don't think even if he'd have to let it go a lot.
You know what? I almost want to say his abs look even blockier.
In a good way or a bad way?
kind of in a good way. They seem to be a
Yeah,
little bit more carved out, deeper, so to say.
I've always defended his abs and thighs. I think it's actually pretty good. Like his taper for being a quote unquote fridge, I think is all right. I think the quads look honestly maybe the best in the abs and thighs. Because his arms aren't outstretched, maybe that's what it is. But yeah, I think the actual abs themselves are good. It's just the waistline they are on leaves a little to be desired to a
The
lot.
thing, listen, I think people get too bent about a guy having a thicker waist. Having a thicker waist isn't necessarily bad. This is men's open bodybuilding. This isn't classic. Now, you don't want to have your stomach protruding. You don't
Mhm.
want to have the Palumboism. You don't want to have what Nick Walker had in the first 5 seconds of their video. But a guy having a wider waist, Jay Cutler,
Yeah.
four-time Mr. Olympia, probably had a 50-inch waist, but he had 60-inch shoulders, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So I think people should stop trying to just write guys off because they have a wide midsection. Grow your shoulders, grow your quads. It'll balance out.
So I want to go back to Martin real quick. Martin versus Nick. How do you think they were stacking up? Actually, I'll pull up the video here. But how do you think they were stacking up?
To be honest, someone has put them together. Probably who is the best BB. Honestly, man, looking at those pictures, Nick is winning most of the shots
Hmm.
by bodybuilding standards. But to be completely honest with you, I kind of prefer Martin in some of the shots.
I would agree, honestly.
And I think that's because we're seeing guys with such good structure, such good shapes. The guys that don't have the best structures and shapes are starting to look even worse in comparison. So I'm looking at shots like, let's say, the front double, the side chest, and I'm like, Nick probably is winning these shots, but I definitely prefer Martin's look. So it's really up to the judges and how the judges are going to judge it. I would still say that Nick is going to definitely home run, knock it out the park, but I prefer Martin in some of the shots.
What do you think about Nick's conditioning? Do you think I mean in some areas it was like he had glutes in the side leg on the side chest, but like from the back, I thought maybe he was a bit watery, and I mean conditioning's never been an issue for him. Do you think I'm reading too much into that? Do you think it's going to be fine on New York on the New York Pro stage?
You already said it, man. Conditioning has never been an issue. I think next to Heidi Chupin, we are currently looking at the most consistent bodybuilder in the sport. If nothing else, Nick is going to come in big and conditioned.
Yeah, I think maybe him and his coach, I think, because there is some strategy going into this. They did play the conditioning game for the Arnold, but now I think they know if they sacrifice a couple percent in conditioning, but bring a couple percent of extra fullness, I think that's the strategy they're going to take from here on out, and it definitely sets a good example. Like when you come out and just bully someone in size, that's you make quite the statement. I think that kind of goes back to what Nick's trying to do at the New York Pros. Really make a statement, not asking for a special invite, getting it the true old-fashioned way by competing and winning at a show. So I I would imagine those are the conversations that went on behind the scenes during prep if I were a betting man. But I mean, against Martin,
I also said in my video too, don't get too worked up about how these guys look at a guest posing. Like we could see an entirely different Nick and entirely different Martin next week at the New York Pro, and especially with Nick. Because listen, this wasn't a jaw dropping version of Nick Walker. I mean, he looked good, and a lot of people expected a lot more. I think we're going to see that at the New York Pro. I mean, this is Nick Walker. Almost every time, if not every time he stepped on a stage, we've been just blown away. And honestly, a lot of people gave up on Nick until he hurt the hamstring, and
hmm
people saw how crazy he was looking prior to the Mr. Olympia.
hmm
That's when people started to believe again.
yeah. I'll end off the section of Nick with Scott Dennis's comment. There was really no good scenario for Nick here, honestly. He's amazing, and I'm sure he'll win at the New York Pro in a week. But this being the first time back on stage since missing the O doing a guest posing with shitty tan, no oil, tough lighting, and backdrop, and being on stage with a bunch of dudes in their off season for the internet to compare him to. I think that is an accurate assumption. Thank you, Mr. Scott Dennis. Would you agree with that? Goat Fitness.
Man, honestly, I can't even grasp what he's saying.
All right. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll move on to Mr. Olympia. Um,
Okay.
and I think he does very well at these guest postings all the time. I think he is one of those guys that look more impressive in the offseason than on stage.
So last night in my video, it was kind of a quick one. I just said no guy really stood out, but I said if you want to say somebody won, let's go with Nick Walker because he's 1 week out. Now that I'm looking at the Gilco production video, the Mr. Olympia won against posing. I don't think it's close. Derek didn't shock us as much as he did coming from 212 to open, but
Yeah.
this guy's improved. He's the Mr. Olympia champion. He's improved. Honestly, everything looks better, but the chest has not grown, and it honestly makes it look smaller. My biggest highlight, Derek's legs look massive here.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that he can maintain that size. But just overall, this was literally the best physique on the stage, on paper, and in my personal opinion.
Yeah, after looking at everyone, I still think Hunter impressed me more, but like from Derek is just better in the offseason simply because he has the leg fullness. Like his legs actually match the upper body, and he still has those standout body parts. Like the back looks huge. Like that's not it's always huge. And then the arms look bigger as well. And then things like the chest softness and like the boyish muscle, um, they get a pass because this is a guest posting, so you're not critiquing the details as much. But yeah, with the better balance and everything, I think Derek is highly impressive, and I think he's actually like he may truly be like the overall winner if you do want to put a that have an actual title, I guess I should say.
Is it me or do the calves look better too?
It, yeah, I think they always are in the offseason. Derek is actually one to train his calves a lot. And he doesn't talk about it, but he trains them a lot. It's just like he loses this when he goes into the Mr. Olympia for whatever reason. It's just where it comes off first.
Now, this is something that I will go into in a video, but I'm noticing that it's the curse of being an Olympia champion. People just start to hate you. So I remember prior to the Olympia, everybody was like, Derek is going to win. Derek is the next guy up. Reading my comment section last night, Derek is overrated. Derek, soft arm, soft chest. Derek is a horrible champion. I'm like, oh my God. Last year, leading into the show, I remember the crazy YouTube videos every single week.
Mhm.
Everybody wanted him to win, but
Yep.
now it's like Derek is a weak champion.
Um, I never wanted him to win. I don't agree with him winning. Um, but taking the guest posing for what it is, this is solid. This is solid. I don't really find any fault with the guest posing. Like, I know some people will call him soft, like soft in the chest, soft in the arms. Like,
Off season.
guys, it's the guest posing.
And I mean, outside of the chest and muscle maturity, you can't really knock him for anything, man. I mean, more separation in the arms is not really much to complain about when it comes to Derek.
Until he gets next to my boy, Hottie Chupin. In which case I have Hottie winning. Clearly.
I had Heidi winning the Olympia before the show and after the show.
Mm.
I actually had Heidi winning and Nick Walker in second in my predictions going into last year. So, and everybody, I got destroyed in my comments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually I saw a comment. He's never beating Samson again. That one was funny. That one was funny. I love reading the negative comments. Some of them are
The
really, really funny.
the entire league is lucky that Brandon Curry and Nick Walker don't have legs. Everybody's lucky because if they
That's
did,
fair.
it would be game over. The only reason Nick lost to Arnold is because of the quads. Literally, to me personally, that's the sole reason he lost to Arnold to Samson.
I mean, yeah, that is like a reason you have to come up with, but like for me just on my own when I'm not like looking for reasons that Nick lost, I really can't find a whole lot, quite frankly, for the 2023 Arnold. Um if I go searching for them and hunting for them, yeah, I'd say oh the shape against Samson is meh, even though I don't really agree with that per se because I don't like Samson's shape a whole lot. Now, especially
Mhm.
with the waist getting bigger, you know.
Yeah, I think that Samson's sponsor really kind of hypes his waist size a little bit more than what it is. He's a 300-pound guy with a tiny waist. I wouldn't necessarily say that Samson has a tiny waist. The same is said for Crizzo. Some people say Crizzo has a tiny waist. I wouldn't agree with this statement.
No, not at all. Especially especially for Chris. I think Chriso is I mean, he doesn't have the impressive lats. He has good shoulder width, but the waist and the quads kind of screw him over there.
Now, Samson's waist definitely comes in a lot once he pulls a vacuum. But I mean, and let me say this for him being a 300-pound guy, definitely a small waist for his size,
Yeah. Uh
but just
yeah.
not small in like measurements. I don't think Samson has like a 29-inch waist.
Yeah, proportionally it's smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So overall, um who did you have winning? Who impressed you the most, I guess I should say.
I'm gonna go with the champ. I was most kind of looking through it again. I'm gonna say I was most impressed with the champ. I'm gonna go with Nick, then Martin, and then Hunter.
Man, Andrew doesn't even make the top three.
In all honesty, just me being honest with you, I I I I wouldn't. And I mean, at the end of the year, I think at least three of these guys are gonna place ahead of Andrew as the Mr. Olympia.
Oof. Is Martin one of them?
Derek Nick Samson.
Mm, mm. Yeah. I'm just on that, like I said, I'm on that Martin hype train. I think for me, I think Hunter impressed me the most. I think Derek probably won. Um, and then yeah, I guess I'd still put Andrew like he was still like it's impressive to look at. Um, but not like so impressive, like once like my barrier for my baseline for being wowed is obviously a bit tainted. I have a bit of a tolerance for these things, I guess you could say.
Right.
It just is what it is. I don't know if this comment's a joke. I don't know if you can read that. It surely is a joke. Is it is it me or does everyone look like they're on a bulk? Maybe it's the camera making them all look like they are off season. That has to be I that must be sarcasm. Okay. Derek's in the offseason right now. Nick and Martin still have a week to dry out. Why are they competing then? Okay, I guess maybe he just doesn't know what a guest posting is.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's pretty funny. I don't know. I love comments. I could do a whole video on
You should, honestly.
negative. I should actually. I think that'd be really funny. Comments I find out in the wild, and even my own. Like I had someone tell me one time, oh man, this one stuck with me because it was so funny. You should be a man and stick to your a man of your word and stick to your opinion. Because I said, actually now that I'm going back and looking on this video, I may have changed my mind because it was a razor thin decision in my one of my comparisons.
Yeah,
He's like, no, you can't do that. You must stick to your decision. I was like, I
man.
I was like, touch grass, bro. Come
I,
on.
I I talked about the Samson Dauda situation the other day, and I was like, I'm I'm not going back into it. But anyway, people were saying that Samson blocked everyone because they disrespected his wife, and somebody commented and said, "You would never understand what it's like because you probably never had a girl for an extended period of time." I'm like, man, it's just a bodybuilding video.
That's funny. That is funny. Yeah.
Now, now I've never had a girlfriend.
The
Okay.
Samson wife comments like so and so is going to be coached by Samson's wife. Those crack me up every time. You know who Kino Body is? Greg O'Gallagher. You know who Kino Body is, right?
Uh, Probably if I see him.
He's the guy that always sells like intermittent fasting and whatnot, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
he's like
Oh yeah,
Patrick Bateman sociopath vibes. And there's always like the Greg. It's kind of like Drake, the type of guy too, but Greg's type of guy too comments are pretentious. Like Greg, the type of guy to do something that only like rich people would do because that's part of his personality, and versus like Drake being like a cornball. You know, you know, I I I think those comments are hilarious. I think those have this Samson Dauda comments have the same energy. Like so and so is going to be coached by Samson's wife. I think that's absolutely hilarious. And him blocking everyone is also hilarious too. Like it doesn't matter. Like we're on Instagram and we're looking at each other naked at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
it's a trivial thing. Um,
I just
but
wanted him to be honest, man. Like
yeah, exactly.
this situation was so extra. All you had to come out and say was, listen, Milos is not getting the job done. I want to find a new coach. And I also want to end our friendship. My problem with Samson was just like, he made the fake apology and was like, yeah, me and Milos are friends. Like you're putting this out to thousands of people that support you. And they're
Hmm.
thinking that everything is good between you and Milos. And then, you block Milos. So that was really my main thing about it. It's like, man, you can't lie to people that support you. You either should have been straightforward with it or you should have just not said anything at all. Because you're just confusing people, and then like he said, his wife prepped him last year. So we're all confused.
Yeah,
We're all
even if that was the case, even if she did, I would have not said that because it seems like he was like, well, my best peaks were actually my wife's doing, but Milos had no idea. So it's just like,
And it's tough because those shows were on the other side of the world. Milo said he had to stay up very, very late at night thinking that he was prepping Samson for these shows, and he actually wasn't. And again, Samson is a grown man. He doesn't owe any of us an actual reason. But he decided to put out a fake apology, and that's why all of this is happening. He either should have been honest or nothing at all.
yeah, I completely agree. Now I want to get to a special bonus topic we had. Um, we brought this up over the weekend. Um, Lee Haney has come out of his shell again, his home, retirement home. I respect Lee Haney, but if you want boomer takes, you gotta go to Lee Haney, and he's been known for this. Let me see here. Let me pull it up on my phone
You
because
know, something I just noticed, and this is very, very weird. He said overly developed quads. Can you really have overly developed quads? And two, did he not compete around Tom Platz?
I mean that all these things have truth to them. Um, okay, Lee. All right. Is it just me, or the grammar is interesting? Is it just me, or does 90% of the current group of bodybuilders have the same squatty shape? Wide waist, big arms, overly developed quads, small calves, and weird shoulders. It looks as though someone closed their eyes and threw muscle at a dartboard without giving it any thought. The new Frankenstein era smug emoji face.
A lot of my comments actually agree with this, which is insane. So no bodybuilder fits this description top to bottom. Wide waist, big arms. That sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger to me. So now Arnold is a part of the Frankenstein era. To me, this made absolutely no sense. I seen where he was going with it, but he should not have through in the specifics at all.
This
He,
isn't
he
2017 anymore. We have
yeah.
Raphael Brandao, Andrew Jack, Samson Dauda. I would throw Brandon Curry in there. I would throw Derek Lunsford in there to an extent. Adi Chupin in 2024 with the improved legs and downsized waist, I think has a fairly good X frame. And those are just like we haven't even talked also about the classic physique division, which is literally to remedy all these problems. So I don't really know what he's on about.
The wide waist and big arms, like I say, I throw those out the window because that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't really think you can have overly developed quads, and if so, he competed against guys like Tom Platz. Small calves. I fully believe that the calves can only get so big, and the guys we have competing today, their quads are so massive at a point. I don't think the calves can keep up. And now we also
Mhm.
know that calves are a largely genetic muscle. Some have them and some don't. And I mean, the only person with weird shoulders is really like Heidi and Justin Rodriguez. So like in a minute, I just completely broke down this whole insane comment that makes no sense. And for some reason, people agree with it. And I mean, I think just because it's 8-time Mr. Olympia Lee Haney, but
Yeah. I mean, the comments, mass aesthetics over aesthetics these days. Keon is solid though. And I don't see the problem with that. Like, what is the problem with like having mass, a new level of mass, a modern level of mass with aesthetics? I think that is an appropriate modern shift in open. Like, you can't just have just aesthetics in open bodybuilding, especially
well, I mean,
nowadays, now that it's gone the way it has.
well, Keon has big arms. So is he a part of the Frankenstein era?
He is. Some would even say a wider waist when he's not doing a vacuum.
Yeah, so is he a part of the Frankenstein era as well? Like, come on, man. And think about the current Olympia champion. I mean, the only thing you could really say about Derek is he maybe has a little squatty shape, but I mean, it's genetic. It's not really much you can do about that. And you could nitpick the calves, but it's just a very, very inaccurate statement.
Well, according to this guy right here, this is the greatest eight-time Mr. Olympia bodybuilding champion, Lee Haney. So we certainly cannot agree. We certainly can do nothing but agree, I guess I should say. Someone says today's lineup is horrible. They had to bring in Classic just to try to bring back a time when bodybuilding was at its best. Lee Haney is the go. I think that is part of the reason Classic was introduced. But also given the era, like there was no like Sean Roden in the 2010s was like the only guy you had that was like fitting the bill. Now that the judges have a lot of these like mass aesthetic guys to choose from, they're choosing them. Now that they're around. You have Raphael Brandau, you have Andrew Jack, Samson. You didn't have these guys back in the 2010s. And I think, I mean, the judges dictate the direction of the sport as much as the lineups do in all these shows. I firmly believe that actually.
And I mean, it's like every bodybuilder is gonna say their era was the best era of bodybuilding.
The 80s, after after the golden era where bodybuilding really started, the 80s were by far the weakest era. Don't at me. Don't
I
at
was
me.
just, I'm sorry, man, but I was thinking it. I mean, I love you, Lee Haney, but you beat Rich Gaspari and Lee Labrada, and you brought your absolute best to be Dorian the last year. But to be fair, I mean, what are those? Or were either one of those guys even 200 pounds?
Rich, maybe. Maybe. Lee
Right.
definitely wasn't.
But at the same time, I can't take anything away from Lee. I mean, honestly, Breon Ainsley is like a modern day Lee Haney,
I
almost to
see
the
that
T.
a lot.
Yeah. Back, arms, vacuum. Lee also didn't have the biggest leg, so
Yeah. I think he's just jealous and is critiquing overly developed quads.
he's turning into Arnold.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Very interesting critique. Another guy that does this a lot is Robbie Robinson. Yeah. Yeah, he does this a lot.
Yeah,
And it is
yeah.
just like an okay boomer moment, you know? It's just like I have people sliding into my DMs like this is not the way bodybuilding judging should be. What happened to aesthetics? Like, bro, they're still around. They're just not everything because we have different things to choose from,
And
you
I
know?
said in my video, I said, yeah, Lee Haney would really enjoy watching the classic physique guys go with it.
Apparently he doesn't. He only knows of the open division. He's never heard of classic because he doesn't even say open. But he just says bodybuilders, and maybe that to him that is the open, but like classic exists, bro. It's a pretty good division. You should try it sometime.
And then, man, he said it looks as though somebody closed their eyes and threw muscle at a dartboard without giving it any thought. Like, listen, Lee, listen. Do you know? You know how hard these guys work day in and day out, and for you to make a statement like that is just unbelievable. Especially having 8 Mr. Olympia titles. Like these guys put their everything into this. These guys got your posters up on the wall. and you tell them it looked like somebody closed their eyes and threw muscle at a dartboard. Like you just can't make statements like that. Jay Cutler would never make a statement like that. Jay is very, very good on just keeping his face clean and being a great ambassador for the
Hmm.
sport. Even if you want to say it, leave, say it to Ronnie Coleman. You don't got to post it on Instagram. It's just disrespectful.
Yeah, not even Ronnie Coleman says things like that. Like he and Jay compliment these guys more than anything because they understand. I think even Ronnie understands um, that it's not their era anymore, and there are different things to choose from. But you can still look mighty impressive for what it is in your era, and you could still be the best of your given era. And Jay Cutler is great at playing both sides, and then he's like, well, back in the day things were different, but now things are better in some ways. It's just different, it's not necessarily better. Um, yeah. I mean, some people wouldn't even say the 90s were the best era. I would disagree. But yeah, different strokes for different folks.
I don't know,
Um,
man. Current bodybuilding is getting pretty competitive. Now, you could maybe say the top five or top six were elite in the 90s, but man, we're getting to the point now where we're gonna have, I mean, guys like Crizzo, Vito, these are guys that are not in the top five. Like now we're getting guys that I think we're getting now to the point where we could have a guy that may place ninth or 10th at the Olympia that would have placed a little bit higher. He could have beat a Paul DeLato or Lee Priest for a 6, 7th place.
yeah,
Because
I
Milos
see what you're
Milos was
saying.
the 10th place finisher in the 90s.
Yeah.
So
Um, I think and this is no disrespect, I think the quality, like Dorian Yates and Ronnie Coleman headed the 90s. So I think we do have an overall more competitive era. I definitely agree with you on that.
yeah.
But I think in terms of the overall like GOAT status, we have less of that in today's era. But time will tell. We don't really have it's very evident that the level of competition is very close because the Olympia has changed hands, 4 or 5 times now or whatever it is. Um, but I just think, like I said, there isn't someone like Dorian or Ronnie that's like heading the
And you
current
know
era.
what, man? What I've heard from a lot of older guys, retired pros, that guy's probably in men's physique right now. Like, it's probably not a guy that's top five, top 10. Because I actually asked Mark Maximoso, because I've only been following bodybuilding since 2020.
Mhm.
Did you guys know that Brandon Curry was going to win at Olympia? He said, no idea. Nobody would have known that Brandon was going to win the Olympia. Back,
Yep.
with him hitting the scene initially, you wouldn't have thought this guy's going to win the O. So I think if we ask people right now, people would say like Derek, Samson, Andrew. But I mean, we never know. It could be a guy that's not even placing right now.
That's that's Brandon Curry. I found this out this weekend. He after 2017 or whatever he did where he placed dead last, but then the next year he placed eighth. He before Abdullah, uh he was actually contemplating quitting. And he even sat down with his wife and he's like, I may just take a sales job, actually. And he was going to quit, then started working with Abdullah, made that big jump in placings, and then the next year he did win the Olympia, if I'm getting that order correctly.
Yeah, I think I remember that because actually Abdullah came to him and was like, "If you come to me, I can make you Mr. Olympia, or I can make you top six in the world, or something like that."
Yeah.
And then I don't remember the exact situation, but Brandon did decide to take him up on that offer. But I know Abdullah told him, "I can make you a champion."
Yeah. Yep. And that he did. Um, so that's mainly what I wanted to talk about. I do want to pick your brain for the New York Pro. We're gonna have an entirely different, separate bodybuilding project bodybuilding podcast for the New York Pro. So I want to keep your thoughts to a minimum, so that way they're not spoiling. Um, let's see. There was a nice preview pick. I want to ask you quick predictions for the New York Pro and why before we head out. What do you think?
Well, we're missing somebody from his image.
Hold on, Angel.
We're missing somebody else from his image.
Uh, Beef stew.
There we go. There we go.
Uh, not
Count him
not
out.
placing first.
don't count him out. Now I'm not saying top one, top two, or top three, but top four, I think it's possible.
I think
I
so too.
do. Because I mean, as much as we want every single guy to nail it, these guys probably are gonna nail it. But unfortunately, the whole lineup never just comes in peeled. They're gonna be guys off, they're gonna be guys that can't hold poses, guys that fade. I think Stu is gonna be on the money, and if someone slips, I think he can catch him.
Mm. I would agree. Him getting beat by Tonio last year is throwing me off a little bit. Um, because I like him more than Tonio, but Tonio definitely deserved to win there. Um, but I don't know, Tonio, he's made some improvements, but I think Beef Stew will be even more improved percentage wise. Like I think he's improved more.
This will probably be the top four, but I'm just saying not to count out Stewart.
Were
Um,
you impressed with Quentin? Do you think Quentin is going to be runner up? He's the wild card here. He really is. We haven't seen him in forever.
it really just depends. I mean, I think Quinn is a little bit bigger, but is more or less the same. I think he still needs to work on the back, pretty much from top to bottom. The back, the hamstrings, and the adductors could all be a little bit better. Quint struggles with his posing. Now, I haven't put
Hmm.
this out on video yet, but Quint is either cropping his videos or taking photos to make it seem like the issue is fixed. The issue is not fixed. I love you, Quint, but he's still shaking a lot of his poses. It's still kind of the same thing.
Yeah, that's
But
fair.
he is a guy that somewhat has an Andrew Jack, a Samson Dauda-esque physique. If Quentin can bring a wow, I think that is what's going to get him there. I think he has to bring a factor of wow to get him into a top two or a top three place.
I actually want to show you this update, this transformation. 2 years between these, 2 weeks out of Tampa, a 1 week out of Tampa, 1 week out of New York Pro. Speaking from an improvement standpoint, for having 2 years away from the stage, is this reflective of what he needs? The level of improvement. I wasn't exactly
I mean,
impressed.
these aren't really good angles because to be fair, his left arm looked better in the older image, and his quads look to be fuller. But I mean, the quads are a little bit more dry. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna go with this is not really good for me to compare because
Yeah.
but nothing really drastic.
Yeah, I would say so. I think he'll definitely be improved. It's kind of impossible for him not to be, but like you said, nothing drastic. I was hoping he'd come in. I was hoping I'd see like a massive difference. Like the fact that we have to say, well, the angle's not that good, things like that. It should be for me for 2 years working with Matty J. I figured I wanted to see so much improvement that it would have been undeniable. And there is improvement, but I would like to see more. Hopefully that's different on stage. That's what I'm going to say about that.
Don't count him out yet, man. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna say this because when I saw the images of Rafa going into the Arnold, I was honestly like, this guy hasn't made any improvements as far as size. I'm like,
Hmm.
Rafa still looks small. But once I seen him on the stage, I was like, oh. And honestly, the same with Martin Fitzwater. Prior to Detroit, I was looking at the updates and I was like, Martin is kind of looking more or less the same. But when I seen him on the stage, it was different. So that's what I'm saying about Quint. I think most people are honestly expecting him to place fourth, but if he can bring that wow that we see Samson and Andrew bring, I think he can be in the conversation for higher than fourth.
Um, Angel, also another wild card coming into the Open from 212. This is the second time he's doing an Open show, if I'm not mistaken. He's at least done one. Um, can he be a major factor here? He's certainly going to be a factor, but I'm talking like pushing for second through fourth, something like that, not just top five.
To be completely honest with you, I don't think Angel can crack the top five. Like, I don't think it's any possibility. And talking to EP09, he thinks Yosef Kavett is even going to beat Angel. I think Angel's probably going to place around seventh. Now,
Yes.
taking nothing away from Angel, he has won an open show, but I'm not sure many people remember he won the big man weekend and he beat Emir Omaragic. I
Yes.
think Emir was only about 22 years old at the time. So, yes, he has won an open show, but
It was one of those lesser
he
European
hasn't.
ones.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, Emir probably weighed enough to compete in classic physique at the time. No offense to either guy, but he beat a very young Emir Omaragic. So Angel is a guy that guys have to slip. But looking at these guys, I don't think anybody's slipping. I think everybody's coming on their A guy. Best
Um,
case scenario, I say Angel sixth. I think I'm sixth.
I'm doing. I just actually put it out last night, so I can talk about it. Angel versus Nick, and to me, it's just like Angel's a lot like Nick. You know, they're both like compact guys, but Angel's shape is even worse. Like the waist is just, it derails him in multiple shots, even more than
Man,
Nick's.
you are tough because I watched that video and then at the end of the front double, you said, "So what does Angel win? Absolutely nothing."
Oh,
I was actually watching it this morning
yeah.
before we got home, but I was like, "Oh man!" But I mean, man, you honest, you honest. So
It
yeah.
just is what it is, you know. I thought they'd be more comparable when I compared them to when I had the idea. I was like, oh, Angel placed third in his respective division the last time he did the Olympia. Nick did the same in his in 2022. And they're both mass monsters, you know, Angel, thicker guy, more compact. Nick, maybe more like a true mass monster. But it just ended up being Angel is just a smaller, even less aesthetic Nick Walker. And why not just go with Nick Walker? Like there was such a big gap um between them. And since did you watch the full video?
I don't think I did.
Did you see my new scoring system?
I was 6 minutes and 13 seconds in. So no, I didn't see
Tough,
it.
tough. You're gonna have to DM me if you watch the full video and let me know of your scoring.
Okay.
Let me know what you think about the scoring system. Because I'm getting some feedback on that. Just wondered if you saw it. Um, so Angel, probably outside looking in. Stewart, does he beat Angel? Does he actually get the upper hand on Tonio now?
Stewart beats Angel. The way I'm looking at it right now is Nick comes out and hits the most muscular and you put him to the side. He won the show.
Okay.
So we got Tonio versus Martin and we got Quint versus Stu.
Okay.
Truly do not count out Beef Stew. I'm telling you, I personally think he has a good chance of beating Quinn Araya. I'm not saying that he will, and it's not my prediction, but do not be surprised if he beats Quinn. I mean, Stu isn't the most extended guy, but at the end of the day, he's big, he's conditioned. I think he's going to be on his A game, and Stewart can definitely hold poses.
Um, And then Martin versus Tonio. I think that's going to be the matchup of the show. I I personally I compared them I Martin versus Tonio for my Detroit Pro like recap kind of sort of because Tonio didn't do the show. I had Martin winning pretty clearly, and I'm going to redo it so I go a little more in depth. But I have Martin clearly beating Tonio, however this ultimately shakes out. Would you agree?
It's possible. I've been riding with Tonio. I mean, Tonio is currently eighth best in the world. Looking at the two physiques, they're somewhat similar. Tonio is a little bit taller than Martin. Both have great backs. I think Tonio's physique just has overall more pop to it than Martin, and I'm expecting that to push him over the top. Thinking Tonio is also going to dig a little bit deeper than he did for the Brazil show, but I don't know, man. I'm back and forth. And honestly, after that guest posing and seeing Martin next to Nick, I'm not saying Martin is going to win, but Martin is pretty impressive.
I'll give you a sneak peek for my viewers because I think this will come out still after. Um, maybe not. You can disregard Quint here because I am kind of doing that in the video. I just included him because I think this will probably be the battle for second, kind of, sort of, maybe. I didn't include Beef Stew, but I'm gonna do maybe a comparison with him. Um, like there's such a size advantage between Martin and Antonio. Like you see what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
I I, I kind of have this is why I have Martin, quite frankly. I think his condition's pretty solid. His back isn't a blowout like it is for Tonio against a lot of other guys, and he has more thickness. I gotta I'm riding with my boy Martin on that one.
Let's see the front look.
This is the New York Pro Tonio, by the way, because there wasn't a good one from the 2024 Arnold South America.
You can just kind of cycle through them, honestly.
What's that?
You can kind of just cycle through all the pictures.
Let me make it. I think I made it full screen. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's gonna block Martin. Hold on. Okay, we'll just go through like this. I think the side pulses are a done deal. I have Martin winning at least the rear lat spread, if not the rear double. I think the rear double can go either way. And I didn't. I'm not done yet. So I didn't get to the abs and thighs and the most muscular, which I think are going to be interesting battles. Um, but yeah, just for these poses, I kind of,
Those
I
look good for Martin.
yeah. Martin is using the Detroit Pro photos, by the way. So obviously, great lighting there. I wouldn't say the same for the Arnold South America at all. So he has that advantage. But I think Martin versus Tonio. You still going with Tonio?
I'm still gonna go with Tonio. And again, I probably do have a little bit of bias. Me and Tonio talk back and forth a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I do like Martin. We have talked back and forth a little bit, but what people say about Martin is true. I will just leave it at that. So they can kind of turn you off to him a little bit.
Wow, that is tough. We'll have to talk about that off screen because that's hilarious. I think I know exactly what you're talking about, but that's tough. What
Great,
the?
great physique though. Great guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
great physique, great physique. Just
I
it's
mean, like we know he says some crazy things from time to time. That's all. That's
I
all.
certainly say some crazy things too, especially behind the scenes. But yeah, that's tough. That is tough. Anyway,
Martin
Tonio.
has a. I think Martin has a great chance of placing second. And
Okay.
honestly, I think that there's a possibility that when the show is over, people may say that he should have won the show. Because I looking at Martin to Nick, even though Nick probably wins in bodybuilding standards, I really think it's starting to be kind of a preference thing. And even
Mhm.
going back to that Arnold where you said you couldn't really find a reason that Samson beat Nick, I think that's kind of a preference decision. And it's
Okay.
possible that we start seeing a lot more of those. This guy wins most of the poses, but we like this guy better.
Yeah. This is why my judging criteria is so good. I take into account the mandatories and the overall physique, top notch. Anyone that hasn't watched that video should go and watch it. So if Tonio and Martin are battling, does are they battling for second place? And does Tonio, in your eyes, get that second place nod? More than likely.
I really have to sit and think about it, man.
Yeah, that's I have to do a
Do.
lot of thinking about this one.
And then so now I'm thinking about between those guys, who's gonna fade? And honestly, thinking about Tony and Martin, they don't fade. Both of these guys get better as they continue to pose. I don't know, man. And I'm honestly gonna keep it under wraps a little bit because I'm probably gonna actually do a prediction
That's
video.
fair. I am too. But what I think I kind of agree with you mostly for right now. Just from what I've gathered, a loose prediction would be like sixth to first, Angel, Stu, Quint, Martin, Tonio, Nick. I'm doing some changing around on that for sure. I'm waiting to see those last minute updates too as well. And
You know, I'm gonna put Stu over Quint. I will actually make that prediction earlier. I'm gonna put Stu over Quint.
okay, okay, that's interesting. And I think that's a hot take, but simply because of the hype. Like beef stew right now, we know we have a more accurate picture of what he's going to look like. And also, do you think Quentin is maybe giving us old photos?
I don't think so. I think
Not
that
anymore. I think he was for a little bit.
I mean, I I think so, but if so, like not much, like maybe like a week old or like 2 weeks old. But
Yeah.
there's a couple of pictures he posted. I feel like I've seen him maybe post and delete them before.
Mm. Will he be Mr. Olympia one day?
I doubt it.
That's
I mean,
tough.
I
That's crazy.
I don't know if you've talked to I guess like a bodybuilding person like me, man. I'm not gonna tell you what everybody else gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you 100% what I think.
That's hilarious though.
No,
No.
I do not think that Quentin and Samson are similar to Ronnie Coleman in any way. No, I do not. It's possible that Samson would never win a Mr. Olympia. That sounds like a crazy statement, but if you would have said in '93 Flex isn't going to win the Mr. Olympia, they would have thought you were insane.
Yeah.
Well, Flex didn't win the Mr. Olympia.
Yep.
I mean, it's quite possible. I would definitely say that Samson and Andrew chances are higher. But Quinn is young, what 27, 28. He has a lot of time. But
Mhm.
right now, I'll give him a top six.
Like career high, top six career high.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I can only look at the right now. Because I mean, now I would say
Yeah,
that Martin. I think Martin has a higher ceiling right now. To be,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't know about Mister O, but I would say Martin can go top three for sure.
I would agree. I made a video, the bodybuilders I'm looking most forward to in 2024. And I said Quentin may surpass Martin eventually, but in these few upcoming years, in these this year in 2024, I have Martin with the upper hand here in terms of potential. So yeah, I think we'll leave it at that so we can do our own predictions, and I'll be back on with AJ Kelly Robert. You guys won't want to miss that for New York Pro. And yeah, anything you want to add from what we discussed today? Guest posing, Lee Haney comments, potential little New York Pro talk. Anything you want to add, Krishan?
Not really. Only thing that I forgot to add in the beginning, when we were talking about Ramon and Urs, Ramon didn't necessarily, I guess, look the best at that guest posing. To be fair, if Ramon could pose better, I think he would have looked a lot better. I think his presentation definitely didn't help that he was in off season shape. But again, there's nothing wrong with being in off season shape. But if
And
Ramon
yeah,
could, if he could pose a little bit better, this would have looked a lot better.
I completely agree. I don't know why these guys don't learn how to pose. That is quite literally your job. Um, but I think that is going to do it for us, Krishan.
Okay.
Um, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate this being the first podcast slash channel you did a face reveal on. I feel privileged, humbled, honored, all the above.
It's all good, man. Hopefully everybody likes the podcast.
I know this is the most diverse podcast yet. Actually, no, that's not true. No. Yeah, most diverse podcast yet. But no. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Hope to have you back on. Really appreciated your discussion, your honesty. That was funny at points. What did you say just a couple of seconds? Oh yeah, is Quentin ever gonna be Mr. Olympia? And we're all beating him off now because oh the hype, he's the next best thing. And you're just like, nah, top six, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
That's that's hilarious. But yeah, subscribe to Goat Fitness.
yep.
Um,
On the
just
road to 10K subscribers, man.
you'll get there very soon. I think, especially now that the season's picking up. Yeah, it's like matter of weeks is even pushing it. So yeah, let's help Goat Fitness get to 10,000 subscribers. He's just less than 1,000 away. So go over there, subscribe, follow him on Instagram, excuse me, and I'll link both of those socials down in the description. So Krishan, Goat Fitness, thanks for coming on. I want you guys watching at home, like the video, subscribe for more, and we will see you all in the next podcast.